Hi, I'm Lynn Cornell, and welcome back to Journey Through the Bible. This is part 4 of Journey Through the Bible, a closer look at John chapter 1. I'm going to pick up at verse 14 again. Remember, verses 1 through 18 is a prologue, a revelation of God's intended purpose from eternity past, bringing the Word or the Word of God, which is God, revealing in the Word itself, to capture the expression of God. He is the express image of God. And in verse 14, the Word became flesh, took up residency among us. We observed His glory. The glory is of the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. And we said that statement not only we have to understand that the Word, the creator of the universe, God became flesh, but He came into the earth, right, to reveal God's glory, the radiances of God. He is the express image of His glory, but full of grace and truth, and that is extremely important. So in verse 15 he says, John testified concerning Him and exclaimed, "This is the one of whom I said, the one coming after me has surpassed me, because He existed before me." Interesting, he said He existed before me. John the Baptist he's referring to here was 6 months older than Jesus. Indeed, we have all received grace after grace from His fullness. Now, again, so this grace after grace, this is where we come to right here. This is the main point. In other words, God could have revealed His nature, and God actually has revealed His glory in various ways. When He brought Israel out of the bondage of slavery in Egypt, right? The plagues of Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, the various miracles, 40 years of providing for them. That's a revelation of God. But not only does God reveal His nature in the person of the Son of God, that He is the exact image, He is the radiance of the image of God. Not only does He does that, but the point of it is to also reveal grace after grace. We have received grace after grace from His fullness. And remember this, remember we read this in Colossians, that God chose for all fullness to dwell in Jesus. And what is that fullness now? As Jesus radiates that out, it is we receive grace after grace. Why is John saying that? Verse 17. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Right here is the great conflict in Christianity. Right here. 3 times he mentions grace within the span of since verse 14, right? 3 verses. Grace, grace, grace. Why did he mention it? Because the law was given through Moses. And this is important to understand, this conflict, this contrast. Law versus grace. This is the conflict throughout the entire New Testament, by the way. If you go through Paul's letters, you find this is what he is battling in the book of Galatians and Romans, in Colossians. All of these things is a battle between law and grace. Jesus revealed grace. We receive grace. What does he mean by this? Now, the law of Moses, and Paul would later say that it was added because of transgressions to the seed should come. But the law did a lot of things. The law revealed the moral code. The law revealed specifically to Israel the ordinance and the commands that God commanded them to live by. But beyond that, the law also provided a moral code, let's put it like this, the righteousness of the law. Now, we don't live by the law in terms of the ceremonial law, the laws, but the dietary laws that were very strict or restricted to Israel. But what we can glean from the law is the righteousness, the just of the law, being right, what we call being moral. So, for example, thou shalt not steal. See, we can glean that from the law. Okay, every religious teaching, especially with righteousness, and more importantly, what we think, or I shouldn't say what we think, but what we've been taught through the law of how to be justified, how to be just, how to be right before God, emanates from the law. And that's important. So every doctrine, every denomination, every tradition, every man's tradition comes, that thought works. We have never gotten over Catholicism, the effect of Catholicism, works, faith and works, right? This idea of law, earning our way to heaven, doing good deeds in order to be right, see, before God. Notice he says the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. And he's mentioned that 3 times since verse 14. Now the word grace means, of course, the most accepted known answer is God's unmerited favor. Let me go a step further with this though. What is the favor? Okay, so there's 2 parts of grace. And by the way, this word grace appears in the New Testament some, depending on the translation, some 125 times, more or less. Okay, so the King James, I think, is a little more, other translations less. But think about that. Grace, 127 times. We saw it just 3 times since verse 14 here. So the word grace means unmerited favor, right? Let me ask the question again. What is the favor? Okay, back up. What does unmerited means? Because we receive grace after his grace. I know I'm being redundant here because this is so important, because this word grace carries a very little meaning to us. We don't recognize it. It doesn't register oftentimes. And notice what he's saying right here. The law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. This is the revelation before the foundation of the world that these 18 verses, remember, is revealing to us. Unmerited favor, meaning that grace is based upon the goodness of the giver. Of course, in this case, God. You could give a grace gift, okay? You could be a graceful. But of course, in this context, God. So grace is based upon the goodness of God, that he does not take into consideration your or our worthiness. He does not take in consideration if we're good enough, or what we can give back. None of that is taken in consideration. The giving of something, giving or the granting of the favor is based solely on the goodness of and willingness of the giver, in this case, God. So now, what is the favor? The favor is whatever the good is, the goodness is. In context here, Jesus Christ, salvation, righteousness apart from works. That's what this entire thing is about. That's what this whole thing really is about. This entire whole journey of salvation. That's what it's about. That's why he says the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. And this becomes, again, the great conflict. Many Christians right now cannot say for sure that they are going to heaven. Because they measured their salvation by their own works. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, you fail. Period. You cannot do enough good deeds. That's why it says we all receive from his fullness grace after grace. And that's extremely important to the New Testament. And we're going to see this over and over again. And we'll see it over and over again, even as it comes in conflict. I'll give you an example. You're going to see that in chapter 3, where Nicodemus comes to Jesus by night. This is the man who were the Pharisees, who dedicated his entire life in keeping the commandments, the ordinance of God. And Jesus tells them, you must be born again. That's the grace. He goes on and engages Nicodemus in a conversation that reveals in this grace the love of God, apart from doing the law, apart from the works of the law. The law came through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Verse 18, no one has ever seen God, the one and only Son, the one who at the Father's side has revealed him. Jesus is all of that. Whatever the Father is remember, in fullness dwells in Jesus. And in fullness it is manifested, it radiates from Jesus, which means grace, love, mercy. Law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. And so that's the powerful statement, revelation of these 18 verses. Remember, so we start out with these 18 verses does is takes us completely back through eternity past, back before created time and space. And what it does, it reveals that this is what God intended before he ever made the universe, before he ever made man, before he ever made anything. It was his purpose to reveal his grace, his nature, his love, and his mercy through the person of Jesus Christ. And that's the amazing testimony.